Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Now, as usual, if you have any questions about this video or any other questions about any other previous videos, or if you have a problem that you need help solving, feel free to leave that down in the comment section down below. And also, consider subscribing if you aren't already. I would greatly appreciate it. So let's jump into it. For today's video, I want to do a video response to one of the comments I got for this specific video. Create and email a PDF in Salesforce with Visualforce, Apex, flows, and invocable variables. And the question that this person, I believe it's Annie Peterson, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, basically asked a few things, but if I condense it down, they wanted to know how to essentially attach the PDF that's being generated through the solution I already have, how to attach that PDF onto the actual record itself, and then how to use an email template as well instead of a Visualforce page that we're currently using in this video. And then furthermore, she or he also had another question towards the bottom. Essentially, they wanted to know if there was a way to pretty much allow the user to preview this PDF without actually emailing it out or attaching it to the record. So, as usual, or at least as much as I try to, I think I always say that, whenever I can help, I provide a detailed solution as to what I think would work. But sometimes I also will try to go ahead and create a video if I think it'll help enough people out. So that's exactly what we'll do today. Pretty much just to condense this down, this video is essentially going to be showing you guys how to create a PDF, email a PDF, attach a PDF to a record, and also, I guess, just preview a PDF. And that's all basically using kind of like, I guess, this tech stack, if you want to think of it this way: the Visualforce page, Apex, screen flows, invocable variables, invocable methods, all that good stuff. And having said that, I did realize I missed one of the requirements this person asked for, which was to basically use an email template instead of a Visualforce page. So I'll probably create another video on that because I don't actually have that done yet and I haven't looked to see how to do that myself. So for now, like I said, it will be basically just how to create a PDF, how to generate it, how to attach it to a record, how to preview it, and yeah, we'll go from there. So if you guys are interested, then keep on watching. Oh, and one more thing before we actually get into it. You don't actually have to watch this video, although it might be helpful. I'm going to basically just go through it from beginning to end. So, if you guys don't want to watch 2 videos, this one should be enough. And I've already written all the code and gone through the full implementation myself. So this video will be a bit different than my usual ones, where we kind of like walk through it together. This time, I'm going to just show you the solution, and then I'll provide more insight where appropriate. Okay, so jumping into it. If you guys did watch my previous video, then a lot of this will look similar. But essentially, we have a screen flow on our account record at the top right here. And it is basically just to generate an invoice PDF. That is the title of it. Currently, the way it works, or the way it works now with the solution implemented, is there's 2 options. You can generate this invoice PDF, which essentially all it's doing is it's grabbing the opportunities that were either closed won or closed lost, and then generating a PDF based on an Visualforce page. And it'll email that out, and it'll attach it to the notes and attachment right here as well. But essentially, we can either email that out. So as an example, let's say I want to generate an invoice PDF and I want to email it out. In this case, we'll use this email that I've been using for a while now. Right here, 42@gmail.com. You guys can send me emails to that, but I probably won't respond because I don't really check that email. But anyways, so let's say the message will be, here is your invoice. And you'll notice there's this little preview option right here. And that's essentially one of the person's requirements, where it was, what if I just want to, the user wants to view the PDF, but they don't actually want to email it out or even attach it down here? Well, in that case, you would check this box right here, which we'll kind of walk through in a bit. But let's say we did want to basically email it and attach it to this record. Well, this is how you would do it. You would fill out this email input right here, and then provide a message if you wanted to. I believe this is optional. And then you click on generate invoice. And now I did kind of provide a second screen to kind of show like a results thing right here, basically saying it has been emailed out and it has been attached to the record. And if we hop over to that email real quick, we can see right here that we got an email saying here is the invoice PDF you requested. And if we click on the actual PDF, here is our actual PDF. Here's the opportunities that we won, I guess, and the ones that we lost. And then as well, here's the optional message that here's your invoice. So it's basically working as it was in our previous video. The difference now being that if we jump into our org, instead of emailing out and attaching it, and actually I should probably show that. You'll see here if we scroll down, here is the invoice. If we click on it, oh, this is not the one. Let me go ahead and actually, I think I had to click on finish right here so I can refresh. And if we refresh and now we click on this invoice right here, it should be pretty much the one that we sent out. Here is your invoice. So not much of a difference there. But where the difference does lie is if we click on this preview only checkbox right here, then now the only thing that the user can put in is a message. So we'll give a message of like preview only, like do not email or something. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But if we click on generate invoice now, you'll see here that instead of saying, you know, like, oh, we emailed it out and it's been attached to your record, which in this case it's not, we can click on this little link right here. And now it opens up the PDF in a completely different tab, allowing you to basically preview it. So I think that basically covers that person's requirement. Now we have the ability to email, attach, and preview if need be. And if we close this and now we click out of this, so that we do a little refresh, you'll see here that we do not have an additional, oh, my bad. We don't have an additional invoice PDF that generated. So these two I did much earlier today in the morning. And this is the one that we did prior to previewing the PDF. So that's basically how it works. Now, jumping into the actual, I guess, implementation of it, I went ahead and kind of, I created another flow based off the one that we had done in the previous video, and I kind of formatted it a little bit different. I think I'm even using the auto layout. None of that is important. The few differences right here, we still start with the generate invoice PDF, and here are our two different inputs. And you might have noticed that when we click on the preview only, this one goes away. Essentially, if I just added a condition right here for the set component visibility, basically if this is checked, hide this out. So it's not much, it's not too complicated. It's not really important for this either. But now the difference is if the user doesn't provide any input, being the email or the preview only, then they're going to get an error message right here, basically saying we can't generate, we don't know what to do because you didn't give us an email or you didn't check the checkbox. And to kind of show that is, you know, let's leave this blank, let's not check this, let's click on the button, and our flow can't really do anything, right? Because we didn't give it an action. So it's just like a little, I guess, an easy way of making sure that, you know, the user can't do anything funny on us. So, you know, it lets them just retry the flow again without them knowing why they messed up. So that's the right lane right here. Now, if they did provide an email or they checked the preview checkbox, then we go to this decision tree right here. And now a lot of these like labels, I kind of like, well, since I cloned an older version of this, I didn't really bother changing them. So some of these labels might not seem appropriate anymore. So just kind of ignore that. And I guess this is a good time to kind of say what I always say, that none of this is production grade code or implementation or a solution. And, you know, you should always follow best practice. I'm just kind of showing you guys what we can do. Furthermore, I'm not a professional developer or anything, a professional expert Salesforce developer. I just know enough to do some things. So yeah, we'll just kind of leave it at that. Anyways. So if they do provide an email or they check the checkbox, it goes to the left lane right here. And here is where our Apex action got kind of fires, which we'll go into that in a bit. That's the invocable method. You'll see here that we're passing in a few things or a few variables rather to that invocable method. We're still passing in the record ID, which is in this case the account, the email value if there is one, the optional message, which if there is one, and then this preview only, which is that checkbox. So it's either going to send, it's a Boolean, it's going to send true or false, depending on what it is. Optionally as well, and this is the way we get that preview URL. this is basically the return type of this invocable method. We're expecting to get back this thing called preview PDF URL, and it could be blank or it could have some value, but essentially that's how we get that URL back if they click that checkbox. So moving on, from here, if the return type of that preview PDF, actually let me click on this right here so you can see it. Essentially, we're saying right here, if the user did, click on that preview only checkbox, then we're going to go to the left lane, which shows a different screen. And if they didn't click on that checkbox, well, then we're actually going to show them like the emailed and attached PDF screen. So let me show the one on the left right here. The one on the left right here, which is for the preview only, we created a display text component right here. And essentially, it's just a link. So if I click on this right here and I click on this little thing right here, you'll see here that we're doing a /, and then this is the value that we got back from our invocable method. And what the / is doing, it's essentially saying this is a relative URL. So basically just, Salesforce, you do the URL building for me, and I'm going to give you everything after the .com. So essentially Salesforce will build up the URL, whether you're using a my domain, or if it's like one of those CS or whatever instance URLs that you have, it'll build it for you and you're going to give it everything after the .com. So that's basically how we do that part. Now, if they didn't click the checkbox, it's going to go to this right one right here, which is still pretty much the same as before. Or actually, no, this is brand new. I did add this as well. This is basically just that success message saying that, something happened and here is what happened. I believe in the previous video, we didn't have this. So what would happen is the user would, fill out the email, put a message, click on generate PDF, and the page would just kind of refresh without doing anything. So the user wasn't really sure if it worked or not. But now, adding some of these screens with some decisions, the user can kind of get a feel for like what's happening in the flow. So I thought it was like a nice little touch. So I think that kind of covers it on the flow layout. And again, if I forgot something, feel free to let me know, or I would probably just put it in the comments if I remember on time. But anyways, so this is the flow itself. Not much is different aside from just adding, a bit more of a conditional trees or whatever they're called, and then displaying what's appropriate. The good stuff, or the fun stuff, I guess, happens on the back end, which is the Apex code. So let's jump into that. So right here, the code does look quite a bit different. I believe in the previous version of this flow and implementation, we had basically passed back like the opportunities. Well, essentially we queried the opportunities inside of the actual screen flow itself, and then we passed them back to the Apex code. Here, what I did instead is I'm just querying them myself in the constructor. Just a slight change, and I'll get into why in a second. But I actually want to start off with the Visualforce page instead. And actually, let me back up a little bit. If you're kind of wondering how I'm using Visual Studio Code to write the Visualforce and Apex code, I'll leave a video link down in the description box below showing you guys how to get this set up. But essentially, our implementation, we have a Visualforce page and a Apex class that acts as the controller extension. And that is the biggest difference between this video and the previous one if you watched that video. What I did now is I'm making use of the standard controller, which is the account, and then our Invoice PDF controller is acting as an extension. And what this allows us to do is basically use all the good stuff from the standard account controller, essentially that being this portion right here. So by using the standard controller, I can say, give me the record that we're working with, and then just assign it to this account. I don't have to query it myself or anything. But in addition to that, I don't actually have to query any of the fields myself either. So the standard controller will make sure that any of the fields that this Visualforce page or Apex code is using are kind of just like pulled automatically. So like this billing streets, state, zip code, postal code, all that good stuff. That is automatically all done by the standard controller, the standard account controller. Then everything else, select the message that we're pulling it from the parameters, which we'll get into in a second. But like I said, yes, the opportunities, that is a bit of a change. Like I said previously, what we were doing is we were querying it in the screen flow, and then we were using I believe this class right here to basically pull that out. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself, So we'll go a bit more into that in a second. But yeah, that's the change on the constructor side. And here's kind of like the meat of the, I guess, the whole video. Hopefully my ramblings aren't, hopefully I'm not all over the place so you guys can kind of understand what I'm saying. This method, it used to be called something else. I forgot what it was, but I changed it to, I think I changed it to generate PDF to kind of make it make a bit more sense. Here, we're receiving this, a parameter of a list of generate PDF params, which is this down here. This is a class, and it's going to contain these invocable variables, which is essentially telling our ScreenFlow that these are variables that we expect in our invocable method. It's basically like highlighting them or making them visible to our ScreenFlow. When our ScreenFlow tries to use the invocable method right here up top, it sees that we expect to receive a list of these instances of this class, the generate PDF params. And so it'll look down here and it'll see, oh, look, there's all these different variables, so some Boolean strings or whatever, and they all have the invocable variable annotation, basically telling the flow that we can use, we can send stuff back to the apex to the method itself. Basically, this just makes it visible to our flow. If what I'm saying doesn't make sense to you guys. So what I did, I think beforehand we were listing the opportunity lists right here. I got rid of those. I got rid of the count as well because that's coming from the standard controller. And now I created a brand new invocable variable called public boolean preview only. That is that checkbox that gets checked. So with that, I'm able to know if the user wants us to email and attach the PDF, or if they only want us to create the URL so they can preview it themselves. And essentially that's the biggest difference. So I think that covers that. Yes, the generate PDF invocable method receives a list of those object instances. And in here, some slight differences as well. We'll get into what this is right here on line 17. Beforehand, I think what we were doing is we were getting the first index of the PDF param list, because we really are, when we're doing a ScreenFlow, we're really only working with one instance of that ScreenFlow. But what I did is I did it into a for loop, and not to get too technical or anything, but this is essentially bulkifying this invocable method just in case somehow, some way, I'm not really sure how, that ScreenFlow would fire, in a bulkified manner. Well, what this does, it essentially allows us to iterate through all of those instances of the call at the exact same time, and then do some work inside of it. If this doesn't really make sense to you, I don't want to get too much into depth because I kind of, how do I put this? I think the Salesforce docs could explain this a lot better than I can, or some other video. But essentially, think of it, like if you ever worked with the trigger before, you're bulkifying this code right here, and that's what I did. So instead of the for loop, it's kind of a lot of the same code that we had in the previous video. Essentially, what it's doing is we're going to build, we have our string URL, which is just like the relative path to that Visualforce page. And something very important to note is you'll see here that there's no / in front of the apex, like so right here. And that is because we want to pass back, if the user only wants to preview the PDF, we want to pass back this relative URL without the /. What I found was if I send it with the /, I wasn't able to preview the URL using that display text that I showed you guys in the flow. It would basically break it. I'm not sure if that's has something to do with like encoding of the strings. But what I found was if I removed it and I sent it back as this right here, it would work. So just something to keep in mind. Anyways, so we have our relative URL, and then the parameters, I built them up myself right here. So you'll see here, here's the ID, we get the record ID, the preview URL, so on and so forth in the message. And then right here, we create our page reference to that Visualforce page. And you'll see here for the page reference itself, it actually does require the, the / before the apex value right there. And that's because, it's actually building up the page reference itself. So once the page reference is built, then right here, what I'm doing is I'm using that preview only value that we got from the ScreenFlow to basically check to see if we need to email and attach that PDF. And I did abstract away the logic into their own methods, which we'll get into in a second. But essentially, we're saying if that preview only checkbox was not checked, then we do want to email the PDF and then attach the PDF. And that only happens if it was not checked. Regardless of that, whether it wasn't or it wasn't checked, what we're going to do now is we're going to create the return variable, or the return variable, which you'll see here. This method has a return of a list of generate PDF return vars. And what that is, if I scroll down very quickly, it is this right here. So much in the same manner as the invocable method can receive a list of of class object instances, it can also return a list of basically the same thing. And basically what I'm saying is I want to return a string that will contain the URL for the preview PDF. And that's basically what it is. You'll see here I created an invocable variable. It's public string URL. And the label just says it contains the preview PDF URL. And it's not required because it's not always going to be a thing. But essentially that's what we're doing. We're creating an instance of this. And rather, we're creating one instance of that for every single PDF param list that we might receive in our method. And again, that's just basically making it bulkified. So you'll see here outside of the for loop at the top, we have our list of those because again, due to the bulkified nature, you're always working with like a list of lists. So what we're doing in here, we define it up the top that we're going to have some list that we're going to return back after we're done. And inside of the for loop, I create an instance of that. So you'll see here, generate PDF return vars. I just call it return vars. And then I'm assigning the URL to be the URL plus the parameters. So this stuff right here. And then we just add it to that list. So we're adding to a list of generate PDF return vars. And then we just let the for loop, iterate through all the ones that we might have received. In reality, I think it's a screen flow, so we should only probably get one at a time unless I guess multiple people click on it at the same time. I'm not sure how that works in the back end, but I don't think we need to really care much about it. But anyways, so to kind of sum it all up, someone clicks on the screen flow and this will fire, it'll build it up. It'll build up the URL, create the page reference. If it was checked, then it does email PDF, attach PDF. Once that's done, it creates the return stuff that we need here. It adds it. Once the for loop is done firing, it just returns that as a list. You can see right here. Now, if that preview only checkbox wasn't checked, then it fires email PDF and attach PDF. So let's go ahead and look at that code right here. Here is email PDF and here is attach PDF. So the email PDF, it's pretty much the same code we had last time. All it's doing is it's creating an email attachment and then a single email message. It attaches that attachment and then it sends the email off. So not much different there. All I did was, I tried to do a little bit more better coding practice and then pulled out the logic for the email out of where we had it initially in the invocable method, just to kind of make things a bit more legible. But the requirement, which was to attach it, which I think the person has said they had already been able to accomplish that, well, it basically would just look like this. Create a new attachment object or instance, and then you attach the Invoice PDF as get content as PDF. That's how you do that. Give it a name. I decided to basically, so there's no duplicates. I just do a datetime.now. So even if we're creating multiple PDFs, they're kind of always have a unique name. And then here, give the parent ID of the account. So that's how it knows where to attach it to. And then we insert the attachment. Now, a caveat to this, this attachment stuff, there is another way of doing it as well, which is like with content, documented content version. I haven't done that myself, so I can't speak much to that. But I will say this is like the older way of doing it. So think of like classic or whatever. And that other stuff I mentioned is like a newer way of doing it. I'm not too sure what the differences are, but there are some. So that might be something, to look into if you're interested in learning. So yeah, with all that said, I think, that kind of explains how to do that. Now, like I said, I didn't do the email template stuff, but if I had, what I would imagine it being is probably this right here. I'm pretty sure I included how to do it in my comment reply, but essentially there's probably some property that you use on your email right here to basically grab that email template and then assign it properly. Again, I'll make a whole separate video on that, but I think this kind of explains it all. But yeah, essentially these are the changes, and like I said earlier, one of the bigger changes was that we're now making use of this standard account controller. I mean, it's not really necessary, but it's kind of nice not having to do, querying of stuff yourself. We can just leverage what's already built into Salesforce, the standard controller, and we're good to go from there. So yeah, I hope that kind of explains everything thoroughly, or at least well enough. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. I'm kind of rushing this video because I know this video is going to be kind of long already. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.